The smoke from Sade's roadside grill curled into the evening air like a prayer that had been waiting too long for an answer. Her hands moved automatically over the fish, the pepper, the firewood, the same way they had moved every evening for 11 years. Her wrists were tired. Her back was tired. Even her silence looked tired. But she kept working. Because women like Sade did not stop just because life had been unfair to them. They worked. They endured. They waited. That evening, the rain had just started to fall when a black Range Rover rolled slowly to a stop across the street. People turned. At roadside places, people always turned when expensive cars appeared. Wealth had a way of demanding attention, even from those who had no interest in it. The driver stepped out first. Then the back door opened. A man in a fitted navy suit stepped onto the wet road, polished shoes shining under the streetlight. Sade froze. It was Kunle, her husband. Or rather, the man who used to be her husband in every way except on paper. Because lately, he had stopped coming home with the warmth of a husband and started arriving with the cold distance of a stranger. And on his arm was another woman. Tall, beautiful, expensively dressed, gold earrings, designer handbag, confidence dripping from her like perfume. Kunle crossed the road without hesitation, without shame, without even the decency to look uncertain. He reached Sade's stall, removed a white envelope from inside his jacket, and dropped it on top of the tray of grilled fish. "Sign it," he said. Sade looked down slowly. Divorce papers. Then the woman beside him laughed softly, looked Sade up and down, and said in a voice loud enough for customers, traders, and passers-by to hear, "Poor women should stop forcing themselves into the lives of successful men." A few people gasped. A few phones came out. And from a wooden stool at the corner of the market, an old woman selling roasted corn lifted her eyes, watched the scene carefully, and made a call. "It is time," she whispered. If you are new here, subscribe right now and stay until the end, because this story does not end where humiliation begins. To understand why Kunle thought he could discard Sade like old smoke, you have to go back to a time when he had nothing except ambition and a mouth full of promises. 12 years earlier, Kunle Adebayo was not a man anybody noticed. He lived in a single room in Mushin with peeling paint and a leaking roof. In the rainy season, he placed buckets under the drips and joked that one day he would own a house where the rain would have to ask permission before entering. People laughed. Sade did not laugh. She listened. That was the difference between her and everybody else. She listened to dreams as if they were real things, as if words spoken by struggling people were not foolish, but unfinished. She met Kunle at a roadside canteen where she worked part-time while finishing a diploma in accounting she never bragged about. He came in almost every afternoon, ordering the cheapest plate and eating like a man negotiating with hunger. One afternoon, he realized he had come without enough money. Before he could explain, Sade paid. He said he would return the money the next day. She smiled and said, "Return it when your pride calms down." That made him laugh, and that was the beginning. They started talking, then walking together, then sharing food, then building a future out of conversations nobody else would have taken seriously. Kunle wanted to open an auto supply business. He spoke about imported parts, distribution channels, dealership contracts, expansion strategies. He spoke with the confidence of a man who had not yet been defeated enough by life. Sade believed him. Not because she was naive, because she had seen something in him that looked worth investing in. When Kunle needed money to register the business name, Sade gave it. When he needed seed money to rent a small store, Sade gave it. When he fell behind on payments and wanted to quit, Sade took extra shifts and stood longer over hot oil until her skin smelled permanently of pepper and smoke. To the world, she was just a woman frying akara and fish by the roadside. But quietly, she was the foundation under a man who was busy calling himself self-made. There were sacrifices Kunle knew about, and there were sacrifices he never knew. He knew that Sade sold food from morning till night. He knew that she often came home too tired to eat. He knew that when he needed money for a business course, she somehow found it. What he did not know was how. He did not know that Sade had sold the last gold bangles her mother left her. He did not know that she lied and told him the money came from daily savings. He did not know that before handing him that envelope, she had sat alone on the edge of her bed, staring at those bangles for almost an hour. They were not just jewelry. They were memory. They were history. They were the last physical pieces of a woman who had loved her. But Sade sold them anyway. Because at that time, she still believed that what they were building together was bigger than anything she was giving up. Kunle took the money with tears in his eyes. "I will never forget this," he said. Sade smiled gently. "Then don't," she replied. For a while, it looked like he meant it. Those were the good years. The years when Kunle came home with roasted plantain wrapped in paper because he knew she liked the burnt edges. The years when Sade waited at bus stops with an umbrella and transport fare. The years when they shared one room, one fan, one mattress, one dream. The years when poverty still felt bearable because it was shared. But success has a way of revealing whether gratitude lives inside a person or only visits when needed. And little by little, Kunle began to change. The business improved. First, it was one store, then two, then bigger customers, then contracts. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough progress to make Kunle start dressing differently, speaking differently, looking at people differently. He began attending networking events in Victoria Island. He started using words like class, standard, and brand positioning. He became embarrassed by things he once called normal. He stopped eating from Sade's stall. "I already ate," he would say. But she noticed he always had room for hotel buffets and business dinners. He stopped answering her calls during the day, then in the evenings, then even at night, when he was supposed to be on his way home. One Saturday, Sade packed his favorite meal and decided to surprise him at the office. She wore her cleanest wrapper and blouse. She even changed shoes before leaving the market. At reception, she said calmly, "I'm here to see my husband, Mr. Kunle Adebayo." The receptionist looked at her the way polished places often look at ordinary people, as though dignity must first pass a dress code. When Kunle emerged and saw Sade standing there, lunch in hand, he did not smile. He looked afraid. Not afraid for her, afraid of being seen with her. He led her outside quickly and lowered his voice. "Why would you come here?" Sade blinked. "I brought you lunch." "I told you not to show up at my office." "No, you didn't. I'm telling you now." She held the food container a little tighter. Kunle glanced back toward the glass doors, where two colleagues were pretending not to watch. "You don't understand the kind of circles I move in now," he said. Sade said nothing. Then he added the sentence that would stay in her memory long after the marriage died. "You make me look small." Sade stood there so still that even the breeze seemed to pause around her. Finally, she handed him the lunch. He took it, not with affection, with irritation. Then he turned and walked away. Sade stood on that pavement for a long time. Then she took a bus back to the market, lit her charcoal, and served customers as if her heart had not just been cracked in public. That was her way. She carried pain quietly. There was one person who noticed everything. Mama Ezine, the old woman who sold roasted corn 2 stalls away. She spoke little, watched much, and people made the mistake of assuming age had turned her harmless. But Mama Ezine had known Sade's family longer than most people knew their own neighbors. One evening, after the market had nearly emptied, she sat beside Sade and said, "A man who starts to feel ashamed of the hands that fed him has already begun to destroy himself." Sade kept turning the fish over the fire. "Mama, maybe he is just stressed." The old woman smiled sadly. "No, stress changes tone. Pride changes character." Sade's eyes stayed on the grill. "Mama, what if I have already lost him?" Mama Ezine looked at her carefully. "Then thank God you lost him before he could also lose your destiny." Sade frowned slightly. It was a strange sentence. At the time, she did not understand it. Then came Ifoma. Her name floated into Kunle's life wrapped in money, influence, and expensive lies. She was the daughter of a well-known political fixer, or at least that was how she introduced herself. She wore luxury the way some people wore skin. Everything about her looked imported, polished, above correction. She met Kunle at a business dinner and saw immediately what kind of man he was becoming. A man newly impressed by access. A man hungry for status. A man eager to leave behind every reminder of where he came from. Men like that were easy to read and easier to control. Ifoma praised his ambition. She admired his evolution. She told him he had outgrown certain people, certain environments, certain attachments. Kunle did not notice that every compliment she gave him required him to despise something about his past. Least of all, Sade. Soon he was spending more nights away. Soon his phone was always face down. Soon his excuses arrived faster than truth. Sade knew. Women often know long before proof arrives. They know by the smell of another perfume, by the sudden cruelty and familiar voices, by the way a man starts defending himself before he has even been accused. Still, she waited. Not from weakness, from dignity. She believed that truth should be given a chance to reveal itself fully before being dragged into the light. It did. And it revealed itself on a rainy evening in front of the whole market. The video of Kunle throwing divorce papers on Sade's grill spread before midnight. By morning, blogs had reposted it. By afternoon, radio hosts were discussing it. By evening, half the city had an opinion. Some blamed Kunle. Some mocked Sade for suffering in silence. Some defended Ifoma because expensive women always find defenders in societies that confuse beauty with innocence. But most people saw what was obvious. A man had publicly disgraced the woman who stood beside him when he was nothing. And the internet did not like that. Comment sections burned. She built him. He forgot his source. Look at the wife's face. She didn't even beg. That silence is dangerous. Kunle tried to ignore it. Ifoma told him to laugh it off. Public memory is short, she said. But public memory is only short when justice is not entertaining. This one was. Meanwhile, Sade's business began to suffer. Not because people hated her, because pity made them uncomfortable. Customers came less often. Some did not know what to say. Some stared too long. Some wanted gossip with their food. The market that used to feel familiar now felt like a stage where everybody had seen her worst moment. At night, she cleaned the empty trays and sat alone beside dying coals, listening to the hiss of rain on metal. For the first time in years, even her strength felt tired. One evening, she drove to her mother's grave. And there, with no audience and no performance, she finally allowed herself to break. "I gave him everything," she whispered. The cemetery was quiet, except for insects and distant traffic. "I gave him time, money, respect, loyalty. I stood beside him when nobody else saw anything in him." Her voice shook, but only slightly. "I sold your bangles, Mama." That was the sentence that undid her. She covered her mouth and cried into her own palm, as if even grief should not disturb anybody else. "I sold them because I believed in him." For a while, she said nothing more. Then she took a long breath, wiped her face, and spoke again. "If loving someone deeply was my mistake, then I need to know. Because I cannot understand how something real became something shameful in his eyes." Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Mama Ezine sat beside her without speaking. For a long time, the old woman said nothing. Then she reached into her bag and removed a small rusted key. Sade stared at it. "What is that?" "Your grandfather's patience," Mama Ezine said. Sade turned fully toward her. "My grandfather?" Mama Ezine nodded slowly. The man everybody thought died an ordinary transport contractor was not ordinary. He built more than he showed. He trusted fewer people than they realized. And before he died, he left instructions. She placed the key in Sade's hand. He said, "Give this to my granddaughter only when her heart has been broken enough to stop confusing love with surrender." Sade looked stunned. "What does it open?" "A storage box." "Where?" "Outside Ibadan. And inside it is the reason I told you not to fear losing a man who had already lost his character." The next morning, Sade and Mama Ezine drove in silence. The storage facility was old but secure. A metal warehouse lined with numbered compartments and dust. Their footsteps echoed. Mama Ezine stopped at Unit 17. Sade's hands trembled as she placed the key into the lock. The door opened with resistance. Inside were documents, boxes, files, 2 sealed envelopes, a fireproof case. Sade crouched slowly and started reading. Land titles, commercial property deeds, investment papers, share certificates. Then she saw the name that made her breathe stop for a moment. Afolayan Community Bank Holdings. A controlling share. In her name. Not recently transferred. Not newly created. Placed in trust years ago by her grandfather, Chief Adewale Afolayan, one of the quiet founding investors in a regional banking group that had grown into one of the most powerful trade financing institutions in the Southwest. There was more. 3 market plazas, a logistics warehouse, agricultural land, Fixed deposits matured years earlier. A letter. Her grandfather's handwriting was sharp and disciplined. If you are reading this, then life has shown you what character costs. I did not hide this wealth because I was ashamed of it. I hid it because visible wealth attracts hungry people. And I wanted your life to first reveal who loved you without reward. Build quietly. Help wisely. Never use money to buy loyalty. And never hand power to someone who thinks humility is weakness. Sade read the letter twice. Then she sat down on the dusty floor and laughed once. A broken, disbelieving sound. All these years, she had been standing over smoke while owning more than the people who pitied her. Mama Ezine watched her carefully. "I could not give it to you before," she said softly. "You would have spent it saving a man who was busy preparing to despise you." Sade lowered the letter. Her face changed. Not into joy, into clarity. And clarity, in wounded people, is more powerful than celebration. Over the next 3 weeks, Sade moved with frightening calm. She met lawyers, bank executives, auditors, trust administrators. The women and men who first expected a timid roadside seller quickly realized they were sitting across from someone who understood numbers, leverage, and silence. Sade was not loud in meetings. She did not need to be. Competence has its own volume. At the central office of Afalayan Community Bank, the chairman himself greeted her personally after reviewing the trust documents. "We have been waiting for you for years," he said. Sade replied, "I was waiting for myself." The bank had one issue currently dominating discussion. A new commercial lending program was being structured for medium-scale import businesses, and one of the applicants seeking a major expansion facility was Kunle Adebayo. Sade looked at the file for a long time. He needed the bank. He needed its approval to scale his business, secure a warehouse contract, and enter the exact social circle for which he had traded his marriage. Life did not always offer poetic timing. This time, it did. A week later, invitations were sent out for the bank's annual Investor and Business Partners Gala in Lagos. Kunle received one. He was thrilled. Ifoma was even more thrilled, though not for the reasons she pretended. By then, Kunle had started noticing things. Her wealth was full of cracks. Her connections were inconsistent. Her family influence became vague each time details were needed. He had begun suspecting that the glamorous future he had chosen over Sade might itself be an expensive performance. But pride is stubborn, and nothing traps a person like the fear of admitting they destroyed something real for something fake. So he still attended the gala with her. He still wore confidence like a borrowed jacket. He still believed the worst thing he had done was leave a woman too simple for his new life. He had no idea he was walking into a room where the truth had already reserved a seat for him. The ballroom glittered. Crystal lights, polished floors, soft music, waiters moving like choreography. Kunle felt at home in the kind of room he had once worshipped from a distance. Ifoma clung to his arm, scanning faces, calculating influence. Then the room shifted. Not loudly, but noticeably. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. Attention moved toward the entrance. Kunle turned too. A woman stood there in a deep wine-colored gown, elegant but unforced, with her hair swept back and her posture carrying the kind of stillness people mistake for royalty, because real power rarely rushes. Two senior executives walked beside her. The chairman of the bank himself moved toward her with both hands extended. Kunle stared. It was Sade. Not the Sade from the roadside stall, not the Sade from the market video. The same woman, yes, but now stripped of every circumstance that had once made small-minded people underestimate her. Ifoma laughed nervously. What is she doing here? The chairman stepped onto the stage moments later and tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he said warmly, tonight we celebrate growth, trust, and legacy. But before we proceed, we have the honor of formally welcoming one of the most important stakeholders in the history of this institution. The room quieted. For many years, her family's position in this bank was kept private by design. Her grandfather believed that true wealth should serve before it speaks. He turned toward the entrance. Please welcome Ms. Sade Afolayan, majority shareholder of Afolayan Community Bank Holdings. The applause rose slowly, then fully. Kunle's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He did not even feel the liquid on his shoes. He was too busy watching the woman he had called embarrassing walk into a room full of the exact people whose approval he had chosen over her. Ifoma went pale. Because in that one terrible moment, she understood something Kunle was only beginning to understand. The woman she mocked as poor was not just wealthier than them. She was the source of the table they were both trying to sit at. The internet did what it always does when humiliation comes back wearing justice. Someone at the gala posted a split-screen video. On one side, Ifoma saying, "Poor women should stop forcing themselves into the lives of successful men." On the other, Sade being welcomed as majority shareholder while the ballroom applauded. By dawn, it had millions of views. People laughed. People rejoiced. People quoted karma like scripture. Kunle did not sleep. The next morning, he went to the old market. Sade was there one last time, supervising workers who were measuring the land around her stall. Kunle stood a few feet away like a man who had reached the grave of his own decisions. "Sade," he said. She looked at him calmly. For the first time, he saw no longing in her face. No hurt reaching for explanation. No invisible thread tying her emotions to his behavior. Just completion. "I made a mistake," he said. Sade said nothing. Kunle swallowed hard. "The biggest mistake of my life." Still, she said nothing. He stepped closer. "I don't know what happened to me." Sade finally spoke. "I do." Her voice was soft. "You started believing that success erased memory. You started thinking the height you reached mattered more than the hands that lifted you." Kunle's eyes filled. "I was blind." "No," Sade replied. "Blind men do not choose. You chose." That landed harder because it was true. Kunle lowered his head. "I am sorry." Sade nodded once. "I believe you." Hope flickered across his face. Then she ended it. But remorse is not restoration. He looked crushed. Sade continued, calm as rain. "When you had nothing, I loved you completely. When you believed I had nothing, you discarded me completely. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Kunle began to cry quietly. Sade did not insult him, did not raise her voice, did not perform revenge. That made it worse, because dignified truth wounds deeper than rage. She turned to the workers. Please continue. Kunle stood there a few more seconds, then walked away, carrying the full weight of a life he had traded badly. Ifoma's downfall came quickly. Investigations into her finances exposed debt, fake affiliations, and borrowed luxury. The designer life was mostly credit. The influence was mostly exaggeration. The status was mostly costume. Within a month, she disappeared from the same social circuit she once moved through like a queen. No one looked for her very hard. Kunle lost the bank facility. Not because Sade interfered unfairly, because the due diligence process found weaknesses that had previously been ignored under the glow of his rising reputation. That was another painful lesson. Sometimes people think karma means supernatural punishment. Often, it simply means truth arriving after vanity has delayed it. As for Sade, she bought the entire strip of market land where her stall once stood. Not to show off, to transform it. The roadside grill became the foundation for a beautiful restaurant specializing in local food, prepared with the same recipes she had perfected over years of smoke and sacrifice. Upstairs, she built a support center for abandoned and financially vulnerable women. Training rooms, business grants, legal aid, temporary shelter. She named the center after her mother. She created a scholarship fund in her grandfather's name for young women studying accounting, finance, and business management. At the opening ceremony, journalists asked her the question everybody wanted answered. Did you ever regret those years at the roadside stall? Sade looked at the building behind her and smiled faintly. No, she said. That fire fed me in more ways than one. The reporters waited. She continued. It taught me endurance. It taught me discipline. It taught me that dignity is not what people call you when you are successful. Dignity is who you are when people believe you are nothing. And just like that, the woman once pitied by strangers became a lesson they would repeat for years. So if there is a lesson in Sade's story, it is not that pain automatically leads to reward. Pain does not make everybody powerful. Some pain only destroys. What mattered was who Sade chose to remain while life was humiliating her. She remained disciplined. She remained generous. She remained observant. She remained dignified. She did not become valuable when the ballroom applauded her. She was already valuable when she stood over hot charcoal and used tired hands to build someone else's future. Money did not create her power. It revealed it. And for every Kunle in this world, every person who climbs using another person's sacrifice and then looks down with shame, remember this. Be careful who you call ordinary. Be careful who you dismiss because they look too simple for the rooms you want to enter. The quietest person in the market may be the one who owns the street. The woman beside the fire may be the one funding the bank. And the person you are most eager to embarrass may be the very person life intends to use to expose you. If this story moved you, leave a comment with the line that hit you the hardest. And if you want more powerful African stories like this one, like this video and subscribe. We'll see you in the next story.